Okay, well, let's get started. Today is Friday, January 7th, 2022. We made it. We made it to 2022. All right. Well, thank you for joining us for our Legislative Action Committee, our first meeting of the year. And as is our tradition, the first meeting of the year has historically been dedicated to hearing from the city, our mayor, and this year is no exception. So with no further ado, Mayor Paul, I'm going to hand it over to you and leave it to you to introduce our new city manager and let us know what's on your mind for this year and your priorities for 2022.
Yeah, sure. Thanks, Rick. Really appreciate it. Great to see everyone here. Last time I did this, it was really nice to be able to get a feel of the room. First of all, can you guys hear us okay? Are we audible in your, oh boy, so we just shift over to.
Don't speak any quieter. How's that?
Oh, really?
We can just get you.
Let me do this because I do have a cup of water here.
Okay.
So I'll go ahead and, take sips, occasionally. All right. So great to see everyone. We're happy to be able to bring this to you from Community Hall. I wanted to be able to introduce our new city manager. So thank you to Anjali for your outreach and for keeping on the tradition of having the mayor kick off the Legislative Action Committee meetings of Cupertino. As we know, it's an incredibly deep-rooted historic relationship between the Chamber of Commerce and the city of Cupertino. The chamber, in fact, was incorporated, and I'll say some of this stuff for Jim's benefit, right? It was incorporated a couple of years before the city was incorporated. And really what we had essentially were orchards that were turning into subdivisions, mainly housing oriented. And so some businesses were here. Essentially, members of the chamber incorporated the city a couple of years later. And the fact that we have a legislative action committee that meets, and I'm able to talk to our chamber members, our interested members here at the very beginning of the year, introduce a new city manager, as well as the fact that I would imagine that Jim actually hasn't met some of the people on his own staff until we get to this chamber meeting, which is interesting. Some would even say that perhaps that's a bit alarming, right? I mean, why are we so intercalated with the business community through the Chamber of Commerce? I'm really much more fluid, I think, in terms of the way I view things and perspectives. Maybe over the years, it doesn't seem that way, when looking at particular principled stands and whatnot. But, I look at it from the perspective of the historicity of it. And I think that, it is quite appropriate to have that type of relationship. It's been successful in the past. But of course, some of the concerns that have come up over the course of the years has been, well, let's just make sure that, we understand where each other's, borders and sandboxes are, the roles and responsibilities. And, I think for the most part, I used to say 90 to 95%. I'll peg it at around 99-point-something% right now. We get it fantastically right. There are our border and edge cases where there are just such high stakes. There are, a lot of interests out there. We're talking right now. I don't have my mask on. None of you have your masks on, but of course you're in your own room, presumably. I think Victoria had her mask on, so I'm assuming she's across the street, across Stevens Creek over at the Assembly Member's office, interacting with other people perhaps. But I mean, there are a lot of important issues that we need to work out together. We've worked them out fantastically well. No one can argue with the metric that Cupertino, out of all the cities in Santa Clara County, did the best when it came to dealing with the pandemic. And I'll tell you, the basic metric is you look at the rates. You look at the rates of contraction, you look at the rates of getting the vaccine, and we absolutely had the highest. And I think it starts and ends with our residents and how they go about being very careful about things and making sure that they approach things the right way. But it also, is affected by our leadership. On March 17th, of 2020. That was the last time we had a live council meeting here in Community Hall. And, Mayor Scharf at the time had actually gone to the National League of Cities meeting in Washington, D.C. and contracted COVID. And I closed that meeting by just telling people, 5 very simple words, be healthy and be safe, and really it's just that basic type of direction. If you've got the right kind of community that can really help crystallize and focus people on those really critical times. We also made sure that we mobilized quickly with regard to getting PPE over to our hospitals. I see that we have a lot of various representatives from parts of the community here. We don't have our healthcare professionals. Usually Han is here. I know that she's on your board now. But we were able to work really well with Kaiser. And I think that we are able to, keep on going down that path. Where Omicron takes us is frankly anyone's guess. I'll tell you mine. I think that it's probably harbingering, mass immunization of people that don't have it, frankly. But I wouldn't lay bets on it, and I'm not doing that. We're obviously not meeting in person right here, right now. But the fact of the matter is, if you go around this room, and I'm not able to see it right now, but I think you basically have a few components. You've got city staff, you've got chamber staff, you've got politicians, you've got educational institutions represented, as well as some finance. And so, we also have, the restaurant sector. I didn't see anyone from Apple in on this meeting, but I will tell you in candor, I have set up an initial meet with Apple representatives.
Darcy, I'm here.
Okay, hey,
Rod came late.
Guys.
Rod, yeah, sorry, I'm not able to see the tessellated version of this. I can only see, Jim's pretty face in my mug. Yeah, well, good to see you. Good to hear you anyway. So, if you look at those various sectors, right, and there's more, of course, right? There's restaurants, there's things like print shops. There's just, we have a whole ecosystem of businesses, right? And so, sometimes when I make focuses, I will name, what will be, as an understatement, a really successful company in our city. And that's probably the biggest understatement business-wise that you can make, because, as we all know, they just hit their $3 trillion market cap. And the first time anyone hit 1 trillion was them as well, a couple of years ago. But, the fact of the matter is, it's true that not everything flows from Apple, but at the same time, it's very significant that they are in our community. If you look at our chamber, it's very significant that we have very deep-rooted representation from the various school districts. I think every single one of the school districts, I'm not 100% positive about FUHSD, but I know that if Polly Bovee, the superintendent, is called over to speak, it's pretty much an instantaneous synergy. And they're represented by or deeply interconnected with our chamber as well. So, you've got the other aspects. I think with regard to the business community and what we need to be doing in this upcoming year, I really am grateful for the line of succession of the various chamber boards, the executive, of course, Anjali, good to see you again, as well as the chamber presidents over the years that have put various focuses on, different parts of our business community. And so, Sean, you've done a great job through a very difficult year. I know that the turnover is coming over to Claudio Bono, the general manager of the Cupertino Hotel, and I have spoken over the course of probably multiple years right now with regard to the branding of Cupertino and the idea of Silicon Valley and how we don't necessarily take up that mantle. You go around not just the South Bay, the East Bay, up the peninsula. A lot of people are taking on that mantle and taking on that branding. But at the same time, when you look at the various buses in Cupertino, it's not just the VTA buses, it's not just the gray buses, it's also tour buses, right? I mean, people will take pictures next to just random Apple signs in somewhat more active times. I agree that we're missing out a bit on that particular sector. We could be focusing a bit more on packages to attract people in. hotels, restaurants, especially on the weekends. We've got various wineries. We've got a tremendous history of wineries within the Santa Cruz Mountains. Interestingly, and I'll get to Jim, as I wrap up my remarks in a moment. But interestingly, Jim's wife had been managing wineries in the Central Coast for a number of years. Originally a CPA and in the finance sector. So there's some really interesting sets of opportunities here. I think in this upcoming year, as we're emerging from the pandemic, I think that we will emerge. Although again, not placing bets definitively on whether that happens. But irrespective of whether we get hit with the Transformer Optimus Prime variant of COVID, or whether this basically becomes manageable or even dissipates, I think we should be focusing on the idea that, look, you look at our hotels, transient occupancy tax has actually gone down quite a bit. I mean, that's very intuitive. You look at the nature of work. We have a lot of different types of perspectives on it. Cupertino, of course, it's a bit of a crown jewel of opportunity in a lot of ways. And so, a lot of our, I won't call them contentions, I'll just call them discussions. A lot of discussions about how we develop, what we put in, what the residential and other aspects of the public's input are. A lot of that revolves around the fact that we have tremendous opportunities. And so the question then becomes, at this point, as we're looking at the nature of work possibly changing, and that's also anyone's guess. How much is it going to be teleconferencing? How much is it going to be going back to in-person meetings? I mean, for me, I think, I'm looking at Apple and thinking, okay, they spent $4 or $5 billion on their, Apple Park campus. I think they're going to use their facility. Okay, you look at the various types of, entitlements that are being sought and spaces that are being built. I think people are also making bets on the idea that in this area, people are still going to be on some level being face-to-face and creating the office spaces. But at the same time, that is not definitively the case. There's going to be some uncertainty. You look at the TOTs, and there is some opportunity in the near term and the midterm to get a bit of a balance. I think ultimately you're going to have the Valley come back gangbusters, because what you're going to end up seeing is the video conferencing happening, and then you're going to get a saturation point, and then there's going to be a new equilibrium. I do believe that congestion is coming up. It might be 5 years out, it might be 10 years out, but I also believe that we have to focus on infrastructure. We have to focus on getting people from point A to point B effectively. If we can not necessarily get the Central Valley in an hour, or the Central Coast, I should say, in an hour, but the Central Valley, I mean, that would be tremendous. It would be tremendous for the state of California. It would be great for dealing with our particular issues. But in terms of trying to make sure that we're dealing with the here and now, our restaurants now, our hotels now, something like branding our city not only helps to address the near and midterm economic issues, it also helps in the longer term. When we're going out there and talking about Cupertino, hey, can I go in and buy a Cupertino shirt somewhere? You can't do that. You really can't. And I know that's minor, but it is a component of retail. It's something to be thinking about as we're kind of reforming a couple of committees that we have in Cupertino, the Economic Development Committee and the Fiscal Strategic Committee, of which Chamber has also been very much involved. But one of the things that I think that we really need to keep an eye on is to make sure that we're doing these things in a way that is transmissible in a positive way down the line historically. And so if you look at the Economic Development Committee and you look at the Fiscal Strategic Committee, these are the two committees in our city that have no charter. There's no description of what they do written down anywhere. There is no description of how the membership is comprised, and there's no description or requirement with regard to how these meetings are run or who runs the meetings. And so those are things that we have to fix, because in order for it to mean something and to be stable over time and not morph like any particular individual's needs, over time, it needs to have a charter, it needs to be written down. So we're gonna fix that. And so, I had a number of points that I wanted to make, but let me just wrap on this and basically say, I'm not so worried about what the future of office looks like in Cupertino. I'm not so worried about what the future of residential looks like in Cupertino, other than to say that I think that they will both exist and that there will be a market for both of them. And, you know, we need to keep on having these conversations. It's not so much what you say, sometimes it's how you say it and whether you're getting empathy, but it's also sense. You know, let's have the sense and the honesty and the courtesy to, you know, give people their reasonable points and just try to work together to, you know, find decent accommodations. I am a little bit worried about retail. You know, when you go around Cupertino and you start thinking about what are the positive types of retail experiences, we do have a gap in terms of being able to sit down and say, hey, look, we used to have an educational toy store, right? You know, Scott Plouts and his wife, their kids got a little bit older, and you know, they ended up basically saying, look, this is a lot of work. You know, so for me, if I were going to create a list of 10 or a dozen types of retail opportunities, I would say, let's get that back into Cupertino. But I also think that we should have various stakeholders around the room talking about it within, you know, a very well-formed meeting type of construct. We have tremendous opportunities here. It's been a bit of a quiet lull forced upon us by, you know, the necessities of the pandemic. But at the same time, you know, it's given us the opportunity to be able to, you know, reform some of our staff and personnel. We have Tina Kapoor here. She's our new economic development manager, as you all know. And I think Tina's probably been with this meeting for a couple of iterations now. Obviously, we have Jim Throop. We have a fantastic new city attorney in Chris Jensen. You know, frankly, my metric there was, I don't think anybody could do a better job than I could as a city attorney, but I had no desire to actually do this job. But, you know, met Chris, saw his, you know, background. I thought, you know, we really have a great shot. And frankly, and I'll make no bones about it, I think it's a generational hire. But why did these opportunities come up? These opportunities came up because we were being hamstrung, okay, under the covers with regard to, you know, particular, you know, things that were not accurately being set forth about this council. And so what I will wrap with regard to talking about opportunities and what makes a really truly great and successful community successful and great is that it takes these types of situations and it turns it, right? You know, it's the lemonades out of lemon kind of lemons sort of phenomenon. But I think there will come a time where the bridge crossed will be a bit too far. And so I ask, you know, this group, I ask the community to go ahead and think about, you know, rather than creating such an extreme push-pull tension in which we're not necessarily getting accurate information out there, we're not necessarily optimizing the best parts, you know, of what we can pull together, but we are, you know, yes, we are creating checks and balances. We can do a bit better, okay? You know, there are refinements that we can potentially be making in order to get that good, you know, and solid retail in. We can have an honest conversation about the balance between the availability of housing and the amount of people that we're going to be putting in 10 or 15 years. And we can talk about infrastructure. We can get people involved. And I will tell you, frankly, you know, behind the scenes, you know, I haven't talked to Kai or Sandy about it, but I have talked to other people in Sandhill and said, look, you need to focus on transit. You have to focus upon these infrastructure points, right? And so, you know, at the end of the day, I will tell you this. Okay, you all know what my background is. You know, I don't need to be doing this. I'm not looking for a political career. But at the end of this, as I'm rounding out this third year as mayor, right, and there are two people in Cupertino's history that have done that. And, you know, my promise to you is that I will live up to that third term. But at the same time, I'm not really going to pull any punches. I don't have punches to pull. I really don't have any purpose or reason to be here other than to try to improve the community. So I thank everyone that's here. I think every component that's represented here is extremely important. One thing I will say, because I actually do have John Tang on my upper right-hand screen here, is that, you know, and this I think segues pretty well into an introduction of Jim. You know, Jim, you know, he's a SoCal guy. He was a USC grad, economics, and he got his MBA from Chapman and made a very obvious dedication to city governance early in his career. And so he's been in Southern California and parts of the Central Coast, as well as Arizona, throughout that, you know, journey. But he also has very substantial utilities-based experience. Now, sometimes when I say, you know, let's look at the Monte Vista pipes, for instance, and try to see if we have an opportunity there, that is in no way, shape, or form trying to pass judgment on any work that's been done. But I think as a municipality, if we have some wherewithal when it comes to utility and various utilities, then we have just tremendous opportunities. Okay, you know, I was told by my economics, law and economics professor and contracts professor in law school that, look, you know, you can think of this as a pie. Okay, you can make the pie as small as you can by doing certain things, or you can try to expand it. Okay, and so like our idea should be try to make the pie as large as possible. But I think also at the end of the day, it's also service to ratepayers and making sure that we do what makes sense for the market. So one of the things I think we'd like to do in this upcoming year, when we're looking at the long-term lease coming up, is to see whether we could potentially take the pipes in-house. You know, that's an opportunity for us, and to do that kind of work, it's really great to have Jim here because he has that kind of experience with utilities. Now, when I then take it a step further and say, you know, look at our energy equation. If we're banking electricity because it needs to be stored somewhere, and we're talking about looking at, you know, the electrical utility, we've already done stuff with Silicon Valley Clean Energy Authority. Can we be doing things similarly? I think it's just a tremendous spot because our energy equation is shifting, right? So, you know, at the end of all of this, it's not really a matter of saying there's only this much profit available, and therefore if the city takes a cut, it gets like, no, I think the mentality needs to be, how do we make this as good as possible? How do we create a situation where people understand that we're trying to go ahead and, you know, create just great service, great facilities, and being able to, you know, answer the most curmudgeonly of the curmudgeons out there, right? And do it successfully, right? Okay, so that's my idea and approach going forward. I think Jim Throop is a great hire. Again, SoCal guy, so there's going to be a bit of a learning curve, but wonderful energy, very bright. 4 grown kids. Right now, they're just recently empty nesters on the youngest one. And I think that when I look at Jim and you know, we hear him through the process of you know, being interviewed and coming into the city, I think he sees Cupertino as a tremendous opportunity. But that's almost something, you know, I think if you have a brain, you realize that Cupertino is a tremendous opportunity. So maybe what I'm basically saying is that, like, great, Jim definitely has a brain. But I think, you know, with regard to trying to think about what we were looking for in a city manager, my own criterion was the most important criterion was, can we bring in somebody that can usher in this kind of balance? You know, we have arguably the most successful company in the world. We have a very diverse population. We have people coming here because of the educational institutions. We have various, you know, issues going on with these different components of our city. Can we bring someone to bring in that kind of a balance for having a productive conversation? I think the highest praise that I can provide to Jim for the potentiality is I think we stand as good of a chance with anybody as we do with Jim. So, you know, without further ado, let me let Jim introduce himself. I'll, you know, take a quick swig of water and put my mask on. And thank you for having me, sincerely. You know, I feel much for all of you here. And really, you know, just grateful to be able to work and serve with all of you for the last 13 years or so. Thanks.
Thank you, Mayor Paul. Jim, welcome to Cupertino.
I just want to say thank you to the mayor for that. That was a very nice introduction. I appreciate that. And the comments were very nice. You know, I was going to start off with a simple little joke because people look at my last name and they'll say, is it Throop, Thorpe, Throp? You know, we just copied Thomas and Thompson. You know, we just modeled ourselves after them, and people usually go, oh yeah, they have an H in their name too. So again, I answer to pretty much anything. I am happy to really be here, truly excited. It was, when it came up, I was deciding, well, do I or don't I? But then I thought the opportunity only comes around, you know, once in a blue moon. So I did go ahead and I threw my name in there. And you know, during the interview process, the council, I will say, was very diligent, you know, detailed on their questions, wanting to know about the background, you know, ideas and thoughts about the future. So looks like I did an okay job.
Great.
You know, I'm starting my 5th day today, so I'm still learning who people are. I keep sending out emails saying, who does this go to? You know, trying to get that straightened out. So that's going to take a little bit, but I can say during my interview process, I try to do as much homework as I can. And from the financials that I went back and looked at, you know, Cupertino's got to be the envy of many, many cities throughout the whole state. I mean, there's a very strong financial background here. We're very stable. We have an incredibly well-funded general fund balance, reserve balance. Many cities would, give a right leg for that. So that made me look like, okay, something's been going on here well for a very long period of time. I think we have great leadership through the council. I think we have incredible staff in the background, trying to help the city out. One just came through. I always get the Google alerts, and people may not realize that most cities in the state have what they call the PCI, the Pavement Condition Index, in the 60s or 50s even. We're at 85. I mean, that's essentially wonderful streets. So we need to make sure we tout something like that as a city, but also enjoy it as we're driving down the road, because you don't have the potholes really to watch out for as you do in a lot of other cities. So that just sort of goes to show that, the council is really taking a stand on making sure the city is doing all we can for the citizens here. I've already been meeting with council about expectations. I sent back a summarization of what I think I had heard, and moving forward, I'll be working on those, not just myself, but with staff. We do have a very robust work plan, as it's called, and then some other individual pieces to go into that. I know we're trying to move forward as quickly as we can. For everyone on the call here today, as well as those that aren't on the call, I'm trying to get out to everyone I can. I know there's the COVID restrictions. That's one of the things I think I like to do, and I think I'm good at, is getting out. And when I meet people, the idea is not just to meet and greet, but to listen and then hopefully try to educate anybody on, what's going on in the city. Because a lot of times we don't hear everything out there, coming in from the public, but at the same time, the public does not hear everything that's been going on in the city. So that's sort of I see it as a role that I have to play, is to get out there and try to educate people. So I'll sort of leave it at that. Being my 5th day, I'm here. If anyone wants to come in, I told staff the other day in my little welcome note saying, I have an open door policy. So that's my goal. Is I know as a city manager that I cannot know everything. There's people out there that are experts, and I'm sort of a generalist, but I do know that I need to get out and learn and see what the community is about. As the mayor said, coming from Southern California, it's a very different perspective. So I've been going out and doing what I can. As he mentioned, we're empty nesters. My wife and I are looking at buying some mountain bikes because there's a lot of trails to go riding around here. So I'm trying to get back into shape as well. So no, we're excited to be here. So I'll leave it with that for now.
Thanks, Jim.
I would like to just be the first one to welcome the city manager from the chamber. I know Sean did too, but and we're so excited that you're here, and looking forward to maybe we'll come and see you in person outside somewhere so we can get to know you much better. Welcome to Cupertino.
Thank you.
Great. And any questions for the mayor or city manager? And while people are getting those ready, Jim, let me throw in my welcome as well. One of the secrets of Cupertino is that the city council has always done an amazing job hiring very, very talented leadership, and it's great to see that tradition continue. So welcome. And also something that people don't talk about a lot, but it's in Cupertino, it's really 3 degrees of separation, not 6. Mm-hmm. So you're only 1 or 2 steps away from anyone or any solution that you may need in Cupertino. So I see a hand, and is that you, Lisa? Lisa, why don't you take the floor and ask the first question?
Sorry, I had trouble unmuting. It's not really a question. It's just a thank you, Mayor, and check out Lars at Trailhead Cyclery when you're looking for your bikes.
That's the street. Oh, okay.
That's it.
Lisa, we actually missed about 30 seconds of your talk. If you want,
Yeah.
the very first maybe half minute or so. You're kind of blipped out again. All right, well, sorry. We'll see you at a meeting.
Okay.
All right, other questions for the mayor or city manager? I know it's kind of early to start picking on Jim, but that's never stopped
Come on.
the Cupertino community before. Luis has a question. Luis has a question, I think, for both the mayor and city manager. If the city can make anything happen, what would the city of Cupertino like to see happen to the Valco property? That's it. Just a simple little question to start out the year.
Yeah. Well, you know, look, hold on. Let me just. So look, Luis, thanks for the question. I know, Luis, you were a Parks and Rec commissioner before I was, from 07 to 14. You know, and let me just say something about Valco. You know, I think because we've got a situation where, you know, you have this multi-year saga, right? I mean, a lot of the, you know, discretion has been taken out of our hands, but I will say that I think a lot of the public, you know, kind of response to it, you know, with regard to showing sort of your typical, you know, mixed use sort of office, residential, retail kind of deal from the sky. I mean, I had a very similar type of reaction, you know, and you know, and the reason I bring up the fact that Luis and I were both Parks and Rec commissioners is that, you know, when they got to the slide where they covered it with the 30-acre park, you know, I mean, for some reason, I had heard, you know, the Rotary meeting, everyone's going ooh and ah. And it's like, yeah, it's significant, right? But the thing is, you know, it hasn't been done in the Western Hemisphere, and it hasn't been done in the Western Hemisphere. So it's like, what do you expect is going to happen with regard to the role of the city? Okay, what do you expect is going to happen with regard to the work that you want your public representatives to put in to make sure that your public workers are accountable to making sure that this singular thing is safe, that has a fire station on board, that is cleaning up the soil properly, you know? And so, you know, at the end of the day, I would say that a lot of this is just a very misguided paradigm with regard to basically saying, well, if you don't do this right, local control is going to be taken away from you. It's like, no, local control is not taken away from you, because you're basically making like this, you know, either a mandate or a big project on one hand, and you're basically like dumping it in the laps of the regulators. Okay, so what do I think is going to happen? I can only operate by looking at the SB 35 project that's in front of us. We have that project that was originally unveiled with a lot of additional housing, with 2,402 units of housing. Half of it is, you know, so-called BMR. I think the stuff that happened with AB 1174 was a travesty. Frankly, I'll go on the record as saying that. A lot of those BMR units are now much more expensive than they were. You know, and that for me is the sticking point in terms of what happened with that particular piece of legislation. You can talk about grandfathering in objective standards back in 2018, and the fact that this was the only project in the state that fit that particular large project description. That's fine. I think it's semi-debatable. But when you talk about increasing the cost of those BMR units, that I think is the bridge too far. That is the indication that, hey, look, at the end of the day, this is a for-profit organization doing, you know, profit, you know, driven things. But as a city, if I'm just looking at the SB 35 project, you know, the green roof, the fact that we have these, you know, public safety issues, that we're not throwing this around because it's just a bunch of, you know, crap coming off the wall. We're throwing it around because it's incredibly important. You think about, like, we're an earthquake country. You've got a 35-acre green roof. You know, you think maybe we want to put some public safety features in there. You think maybe you want to think about what's going to happen, you know, with regard to the circulation underground. You think maybe, you know, just any number of things. It is now in our lap. Okay. So what do I think is going to happen? I think what's going to happen is that you're going to be looking at the various components of this particular project. Are there options now? Sure, there are options. You know, there are options because basically AB 1174 passed and they went back and said, hey, you get your objective standards. But at the end of the day, look, you can do that, but you still have to work with your local city. I mean, it's not like you automatically, what are you going to do? Are you going to mandate an SB, 72 that all of a sudden, whatever the hell you want to do with regard to your elected officials, they just disappear when they're inconvenient. So you get to snap them in up too and make them do work when it's useful. This is ridiculous. This is a matter of working together, okay? And we can save a lot of time and a lot of heartache and a lot of money and a lot of posturing by understanding that at the end of the day, we have a community here. Yes, there's profiteering happening or profit-driven, kind of motives, but we also have a community. We're trying to work together. We're trying to get these various, components in that will work. And yes, it is absolutely true. After the graduate students in planning will tell you, well, it takes 17 times to talk to a community. Okay, fine. Maybe in Cupertino, it takes you 57 times, but eventually, yeah, people will come around and conditions will change. But the question is, what kind of attitude do you have working with the surrounding environment? What kind of respect do you give to people that are owed it? Okay, because there are 5 people sitting up there. Yes, 4 of them did get elected as well. Okay, so that conversation has to happen in a manner that is not, full of disdain. Okay, so that is my position here. I think what will happen in this next year, as I'm using what collateral I have built up over the course of the last 7 years in office, elected office, thank you very much, is that I'm going to try to do my best to keep this conversation coherent and also effective. Okay, so if we end up with this project, then it's going to be the most fantastic, up to Cupertino standard project that we've had. But we really need to focus on infrastructure right now, because once those 8,000 to 9,000 people come into work, once those 2,400 households are there, once that hopefully fantastic retail is activated, what's going to happen to 280? What do you think is going to happen to Lawrence Expressway? We have to work on the transit part of the equation. So Luis, to answer your question, and I think we should let Jim off the hook here because the guy hasn't had brief on this. I think we're going to do what we do well, but I do ask that people stop acting like a-holes to us about it, okay? Because we're putting in a lot of work on this, and we're just trying to make sure that this is as successful as it can possibly be. And try to remember that we're in a democracy. Might doesn't make right. Money talks, bullshit walks? No, okay? Money does talk. The Supreme Court has already decided that it talks, fine. But let's have this conversation, okay? Let's have a sane conversation. Let's be respectful mutually. I'm ready to do that. Fair?
Thank you, Mayor. I think you've used more sentence enhancers in that comment than I've ever heard you use. So I think we understand your passion for the topic. It certainly involved people throughout the community very profoundly. Sham, you've been very patient with your hand up. Thank you for waiting.
Sure. Thank you, Rick. And I just wanted to echo, Chamber leadership, Anjali and Rick, and them for what they had mentioned earlier, that the city of Cupertino is very fortunate to have such passionate and successful, strong leadership who's dedicated to the city of Cupertino's, success and to be a great community. And we definitely appreciate that, because all the hard work done then has a sense of fulfillment and on our end. And in line with some of what Mayor Paul had mentioned, welcome back, Mayor Paul. We're excited to have you back again. And along that line, we later 2021, towards the end, we some of the chamber had Anjali and Rick and the new incoming president and the board have been working on branding and some of the thoughts behind that and how to make that more successful in 2022. And I think we kind of hoped 2021 was going to be a recovery from the pandemic earlier, and it seems like maybe that's phase 1 and this will be phase 2. But we definitely will do all that we can to improve that pace to getting Cupertino back in the forefront, and hopefully public health will be more successful in getting this virus under control. And then, of course, want to also welcome City Manager Jim Throop, and we're all very excited to come and meet you at some point. We'll probably end up meeting on a bike trail or something, I guess. So looking forward to that, and definitely will be coming by and picking your brain for your thoughts and positions on how we can proceed for 2022. So thanks so much, and yeah, here's to a great year.
Thank you, Sean. Other questions for the mayor or city manager Throop?
Let me just put in 30 seconds with regard to what Sean said. I mean, Sean, really appreciate it. It's something that we're very cognizant of the fact that you were leading chamber through a difficult year. We did manage to hold a Star Award ceremony. We're looking forward in this space to swearing in the next board. With regard to being able to make sure that we are developing well in the retail space, I think that we're definitively going to have to be sitting down with members of the chamber, the board, to find out where we sit right now. But at the same time, I think that it would be good to be able to expand that pie, so to speak, do some outreach to the various other organizations, and maybe get a few more members as well. I mean, I think that we should try to get a pretty cohesive netcast with regard to the business community out there and see what those opportunities are, on top of trying to figure out what it is that all these various elements, of course, residents, kind of leading the vanguard on that, would like to see within our retail environment. So really looking forward to it, and thanks for your encouragement over the course of the last year, and a lot of work. I appreciate what you've done to make sure that the organization moves forward well.
Great. Now, anyone who hasn't raised their hand? Seeing none, Lisa, your hand is up once again. I'm going to call on you.
Thank you. So I'm really grateful that Mayor Paul, in his many words, has nailed his thoughts about retail and infrastructure. And I'm glad it's happening at the beginning of the year, and it's not a secret what his goals are, and I agree with them. And I'm grateful that this meeting, I said before when I think you couldn't hear me, I'm grateful for the chamber for doing this, what do you call it, historically, having the mayor speak. It's awesome. And I put in the chat, but Mr. City Manager, you got to check out Trailhead Cyclery. It's, to my knowledge, the only Cupertino bike shop we've got. So I think there was another one in Monte Vista, but I think it's gone, and maybe I'm wrong. But happy biking, and I hope you find a good one.
Thank you.
And they specialize in mountain bikes, in fact. So
Yeah, they have some amazing stuff. Used to be part of, which actually dovetails with the mayor's comments. Retail has changed. It used to be, for many years, that was the local gun shop. Now it's the bike shop. It's one left. We had three for a while. So during the pandemic, the changes that everyone has been anticipating in retail really accelerated. And so I know the chamber staff is spending a lot of time trying to figure out where the modern marketplace is going and what that means. And I think there's quite a few people working on that because no one really knows. So the path laid out by the mayor is an ambitious one, just because it certainly needs to be. We need to go down that path so that we can have a healthy and sustainable community.
Yeah. So
yeah, go ahead. And then I have a hand up.
Okay,
go ahead.
Yeah, with regard to the retail and trying to figure out what components we're looking for, I was trying to get some money allocated for a Cupertino store. We have it on our work plan, right? And Anjali and I were talking about it. I think it's probably reached the board. Trying to get a physical space where some Cupertino stuff can be purchased. You guys had the Shri Cooper dance crew, dance group next to you. Before I actually worked on that lease when I was on the chamber board. But the fact of the matter is there are some opportunities. I think we will figure out what they are. 10 to 12. There's appetite that can sustain itself, and if we start with this sort of, hey, let's work together to outreach the community comprehensively, then I think the community is also put on notice that, oh, hey, we have an opportunity to identify. Instead of people just giving us kind of a nebulous, well, where does our retail go? We can start reaching out and say, what is it that we want to have? We can get industry experts. Jim and I were just talking about it before this meeting started. He's familiar with consultants that can really help us out. I didn't do this purposefully. I'll put this on my wife. But we went down to Southern California, okay, for the week between Christmas and New Year's. And we actually happened to go right through Jim's town, Paso Robles. We stopped at Paso Robles first, and we stayed over at Pismo Beach, a little bit south of there, for a couple of nights. And those guys know retail, okay? Those guys know, what it is to, draw in people from, out of the area and get like that good kind of experience. So I think maybe it's ambitious, but I think it's very doable. I think it's very doable that we can get together, and find, certainly the buying power is there, right? I mean, you've heard that statistic that for at least a while, the largest demographic sector going to the Gilroy premium outlets was from Cupertino, and that's really where they got not the most of their business, but, as a jurisdiction, they got a lot of business. Like 98% of our residents are Costco members. There is definitely the ability to get some parts of the retail sector revitalized. And, with regard to the Valco part of the equation, we're talking 400,000 square feet of retail, as well as there's about 20,000 squares over the Westport project coming in. So, yeah, I mean, the opportunities are there. If we have these conversations right now, as these types of spaces come in over the course of the next 5 or 10 or even 15 years, then we'll be shovel ready to really be able to, mobilize and say, this is what we're going to actively do. Here's kind of our list of, things that we want to, activate.
I'm just going to jump in there for a second. I agree with you, Mayor Paul, because we have been talking about that Cupertino store to be located next to the chamber. I think that's such a great idea. And first time Tina Kapoor came over to meet us, we showed her that space. We said, this is what we would love to start working with you right away, as soon as we can. As Mayor Paul had indicated earlier in the year, this would be something that the city staff would be exploring with the chamber staff. And so we are planning to spend a lot of time on it and have lots of great ideas. And Tina's got the experience of doing some of those, she had a word for it, the sport, local, showcasing local businesses, and having a space like this run would really encourage homegrown businesses to come out and showcase their goods. So excited to do that in 2022 with you all.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you, Anjali. And as most people know, of the thousands of businesses in Cupertino, most of them are in fact virtual. They're small startups. We still very much are living among that culture. Sham, you had your hand up again.
Yeah.
And then we're going to make that the last comment so that we can respect everyone's time. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Rick. Just short and sweet. I think Mayor Paul, I do, and City Manager Jim, I can't really speak to the retail leases and kind of the traction we're getting to that firsthand. But of course, circumstantial, I do have some intelligence on that. But as far as some of the office spaces and some of the tenants and the folks that are, companies that are working here, we haven't really seen many new entrants, obviously, because with Omicron happening just toward the last month of the year, really kind of upsurging, and until it becomes under control, there's still some probably hesitancy as big companies are working on their budgets and getting that in. So we're not getting a lot of new entrants, but some of the established folks are have renewed through the pandemics. And there is a desire, I guess I mentioned this, there's a strong desire for people to stay in Cupertino, and they do love this community. So the many things that were happening are a very big positive draw. And I think all those things will continue to be valued. So 2022 could be definitely be a stronger upswing. So that's just wanted to add that.
Great. Now I I do see one more question from Luis, but he has this real subtle way of, dropping. They sound like real easy questions, but they tend to get really big really quickly. So, Mayor Paul, do you want to comment a little bit on the Stevens Creek Trail and your thoughts about what may be happening to enhance that?
Are you talking about the Stevens Creek corridor, Rick, or some other part of the city?
I believe that is the question.
Okay, so the Stevens Creek Trail, there are two iterations we can be looking at. We can be looking at the part that's in Cupertino. You can also be looking at kind of a four cities, kind of effort that basically stopped probably more than 3 years ago now. But in Cupertino, right, I mean, we have a number of opportunity sites to, borrow a real estate term, in the properties that we've acquired as a city over the course of the last several years. There's the Blesh House that is close to the Stockenmeyer property, which is another one of them. And then there is a property on the entrance in San Fernando that we recently acquired in order to be able to make a pedestrian footpath, because it's a bit perilous for people walking down that driveway into Blackberry Farm. So I think if you're really looking at what we can be doing in the near term, those properties, particularly I think that house on San Fernando, Stockenmeyer as well, because of where it sits near Stevens Creek Boulevard, but also given its historical connection and its need for restoration, those are some decent opportunities. But if the writer is asking about the golf course, I think that if you look at it historically over the last 6 or 7 years, what we ended up seeing is that, one of your former colleagues in the city, right? I mean, kind of looked at the corridor and wanted to, turn it into something very different insofar as the golf course is concerned. But at the same time, we heard from our residents saying, look, if we're trying to put all these various elements into the Stevens Creek corridor, why not have a Parks and Recreation master plan, right? So fast forward about 4 years, now we have a Parks and Recreation master plan. Good document. It will probably guide us over the course of the next quarter century with regard to how we develop, various elements of our parks in the next 25 years or so. But I think if the topic is really about, what's going to happen to the golf course and the Blue Pheasant, my best clarity in this upcoming year, right, is that we're probably going to still see a golf course in the Blue Pheasant for the upcoming and foreseeable future, because we haven't teed it up to try to, try to reconsider in a dramatic fashion what we will be doing there. I think that probably comes after, improving San Fernando as an opportunity site for public safety. And, Stockenmeyer is a bit of a, it's a lingering issue, right? I mean, we need to go figure that out. And interestingly enough, I mean, in half an hour, I'm actually heading over with our city attorney and city manager to various sites, including these three that I've named. There's the new site near City Hall for, potential City Hall expansion. And then of course, Lawrence Mitty, everyone knows that I'm trying to develop, more park space on the eastern side of the city. So, we're on top of it. And then subsequent to that, the other council members, Councilmember Moore is on this call, Vice Mayor Chow, Councilmember Willie, Councilmember Wade. They'll have the opportunity to go in, and both Jim and Chris are willing to take those subsequent, looks at these spaces. So we're really kind of looking at these in a piecemeal fashion and trying to figure out, the various properties that we have and are connected to in the city, what should we be doing with them? But also realizing that even though we're well off financially, it's not an unlimited well, and we want to make sure that we're doing this in an intelligent manner. But the really, I think, great light at the end of the tunnel, when everyone's patient as we are and understanding, on a fundamental level, when Jim gets fully up to speed with his finance background, I think a lot of these types of possibilities will open up quite significantly for us. I'm not sure if that makes this budget cycle, for July 1st, 2022 to, June 30th, 2023, but I'm confident that it will make it in the next couple of budget cycles. That kind of reflection of that financial knowledge and the expansion of possibilities that we can be improving throughout the city.
Great. Well, thank you so much, Mayor Paul. Thank you, everyone, for your questions. Jim, welcome. Cupertino is boring for all the right reasons. You can walk around town day or night. You're going to be safe. And so welcome to our little crazy corner of the world. And I'm sure we'll see you around either virtually or in person.
Thank you. Appreciate that.
Super. Well, thank you, everyone. Let's go on to our next item of business. And I think we have the development activity report. John, are you doing that, or is Tina?
I will show it. Let me
Okay.
see if I can share my screen and make sure I don't pull up the wrong thing. I apologize. I'm working off the laptop right now. Yes, here it is. There we go. Is that coming through? As well as my emails. Can you guys see that okay?
Yes.
Yes.
Perfect. All right. So really quick, just to highlight a few things over here. As you know, Westport's modifications were approved on December 21st. Also, the BMR building on that site was approved and permits have been issued. Let's see, a few development projects going to City Council, especially hearing next week on January 13th, which is a Thursday night. The first one's a Canyon Crossing, which is on South Foothill Boulevard. Talking about the old Cupertino bike shop, that's the old, I guess, Cupertino bike shop site that had been there for at least last 6-7 years. That's going to be proposed to be an 18-unit mixed-use development with 4,500 square feet of commercial space. The old Bader Brothers site will be that night as well, which is a 9-unit townhome development. Let's see. So the housing element is kind of the big project in my department right now. The next meetings that will happen will be Planning Commission on January 25th and City Council on February 15th. At those meetings, we'll hopefully be discussing or getting feedback on sites to be chosen as how specific housing element sites. I do encourage everyone to go to our webpage, which is engagecupertino.org/housing element. That's where we have our balancing act tool to they believe that housing should go. And I will be presenting the LAC store development, which will be on mission approve this on December 14th and will go on January 18th for approval. That's that.
Great. Any questions for John? John, the Stevens Creek Market, that's the Canyon development you were talking about?
Yes,
Okay.
yes.
So that's,
I couldn't remember the name, so I just
Yeah.
bikes.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you. Questions, hands, I don't see any. So Anjali, yes?
Well, no, I just was going to say Tina, I think, had a update to share with us.
Absolutely. Tina, are you here?
I'm here. Can you guys hear me?
Yes.
I apologize for technical difficulties. I have video on one screen and audio on the other. So I'm here on video too, but when I talk, you'll just see my name. So I'm sorry. Hello, everyone again. And John, thank you for that update on the development activity. Appreciate that. I know there's a lot of interest in these items, and Rick, Cupertino is not boring. So as I mentioned in my introduction earlier, I've been here for a little over 2 months. I do have extensive economic and workforce development experience working in Silicon Valley for cities of San Jose and Fremont. But I will say I find Cupertino to be very innovative and collaborative. And Mayor Paul mentioned this a few times in his remarks. There is so much opportunity here. I'm also very impressed with people, both inside and outside City Hall. I've met some great folks and partners. Everyone's been extremely welcoming. It's, as you can imagine, it's definitely challenging to start a new role in the middle of the pandemic. And I'm really very grateful for all of you as partners in this work. So just a quick update on Economic Development Division. So the initial work has been obviously around researching the economic profile of the city and kind of reviewing, what the prior economic development activities has looked like in the city, development related processes, how that affect our businesses, of course. And as I ramp up, I'm looking forward to connecting with and hearing from our business community and stakeholders a lot more. The focus is going to be furthering the council adopted priorities to help us get the city and the local economy through the pandemic recovery and beyond. And, like formalizing the Economic Development Committee, for example, of course, and then boosting local businesses with different initiatives. I do want to say, a lot of good stuff has already been put in place to support our small businesses through programs like the temporary outdoor dining program, which is still ongoing. I just wanted to give a reminder for any restaurant, if you've applied for the temporary permit during the pandemic, you can continue to utilize the outdoor dining space for 90 days after the local emergency has been rescinded. So in short, there's no need to reapply right now. Please continue to operate in your existing outdoor space if you have a permit already. Another great program is I Love Cupertino. Appreciate everyone who has supported our local businesses through this platform, and let's continue to do so. Gift cards are always popular. And speaking of gifts and shopping, I also wanted to share how Cupertino kicked off the holiday season this year with the busy holiday shopping by proclaiming and celebrating Small Business Saturday. We did this through a first-time creative alliance between the city, the chamber, and the library. It was a wonderful event, and it reminded people to, of course, shop local. We also co-hosted an ADA webinar for businesses to help them become compliant and avoid costly litigations. And I think, we can all agree that businesses, although have shown tremendous resiliency, they will continue to need our steady support. These businesses help the city stay fiscally strong. In order to, keep our economy vibrant, the city will continue to look at how best to support our businesses and sectors, especially retail. Anjali, you mentioned the Cupertino store. The term we use it is the pop-up retail, right? Where we work with local micro entrepreneurs, maybe who have been operating virtually, and provide them with a brick and mortar experience. And who knows, right? Maybe with a model like this, we can help some of these entrepreneurs through support and courage and enough experience to turn into a permanent shop somewhere else in the city. And of course, these pop-up projects can activate a space, add vibrancy, and bring the community together. So in the coming months, we'll also be looking at retail trends as it relates to recovery so that we can support not only our existing retailers, but also attract new ones, specifically those that our community wants to see. This also will feed into the new economic recovery strategy that I'll be crafting to be implemented in the next fiscal year. I just want to end with saying, I will be working very closely with all of you on these priorities. Each of you obviously have a stake in the fiscal and economic health of the city, and I welcome that energy. So also just want to end with just saying thank you again, and please reach out if you have any ideas, and it's really wonderful to be here. And I'll pass it back on to Rick and Anjali.
Well, great. Well, thank you, everyone, and have a great year. That's in order. And we'll see you next time.